Part 2. The Trap Makers, How the Industry Built This Prison. Chapter 4. The Dream. Two men, one smoke break, and a question that could save the world. Silicon Valley is a strange place. It's a land of geniuses and dreamers, where college dropouts become billionaires and garage startups become global empires. The mantra here is simple: find a problem, solve it, and change the world. In the early 2000s, two Stanford graduate students spent a lot of time together in the product design loft. Their names were James Monsees and Adam Bowen. Adam grew up taking things apart. His parents joked that he played with parts from the vacuum cleaner more than the vacuum itself. When they wouldn't buy him a car at 15, he decided to build one himself. He was the kind of person who couldn't look at anything without asking, "How does this work? And how can I make it better?" James was different. He was an artist, a scientist, and an engineer all wrapped into one. He thought in pictures and built in prototypes. He saw beauty in function and function in beauty. When he looked at a problem, he didn't just see the obstacle, he saw the possibility. They were the kind of students professors love: brilliant, curious, driven. The kind of people Silicon Valley venture capitalists dream of funding. But there was one thing they both did that didn't fit the image. They smoked. The secret they carried. Adam's grandfather, his mother's father, had been a heavy smoker. Several packs a day. He died young because of it. Adam knew this. He remembered his mother's voice when she talked about her father. He remembered the sadness in her eyes. He hated cigarettes. And yet, every time he lit one, he felt torn. Doing something he knew was killing him. Doing something he knew his mother would hate. Doing something he couldn't easily give up. James understood. He had his own reasons. His own contradictions. Smoking was irrational. It was stupid. It was deadly. And yet, there he was, standing behind the design building, watching the smoke curl into the California air. One day, during one of those smoke breaks, James looked at the cigarette burning in his hand. He watched the smoke rise. He felt the familiar rush. And then he asked a question that would change everything. What if we could remove all the bad parts of smoking, but keep the things we actually enjoy? Adam looked at his own cigarette, then back at James. In that moment, an idea was born. They believed they could reinvent the cigarette. They believed they could save millions of lives. They believed they could be heroes. The research that revealed a dark history. They started digging. At the University of California, San Francisco, there is a massive collection of tobacco industry documents, internal memos, secret research, confidential reports. Over 14 million pages of evidence from lawsuits against big tobacco. James and Adam spent weeks reading through them, searching for one thing. What are the best ways to reduce the harm from smoking? What they found shocked them. Tobacco companies had been asking the same question for decades. Since the late 1950s, cigarette makers had secretly worked on creating a safer cigarette. They knew their products were killing people. They knew that cigarettes were responsible for lung cancer, heart disease, emphysema. They knew, and they hid it. And they wanted a way out, a way to keep people addicted without causing so much harm. The idea, keep the addiction, remove the deadly effects, wasn't new. It was the hidden goal of big tobacco for over 50 years. But the big companies couldn't admit this publicly. They were trapped in their own lies. For decades, they had testified before Congress, swearing under oath that nicotine wasn't addictive, that cigarettes didn't cause cancer. They had created an entire industry of denial. They couldn't suddenly announce, "Actually, we've been working on a safer version all along." James read these documents late into the night. He saw the memos from the 1960s, the secret research from the 1970s, the internal debates from the 1980s. And he realized an important fact. Change would have to come from outsiders. People like him and Adam. They weren't big tobacco. They were the opposite. They were designers, not dealers. They were innovators, not liars. They were here to save smokers, not trap them. At least, that's what they believed. The problem with existing vapes. Vaporizers already existed in the early 2000s. But they were terrible, Huge, complicated machines that looked like something from a sci-fi movie. You needed coils, batteries, tanks, and a degree in engineering to figure them out. You had to buy e-liquids separately, mix it yourself, and hope you didn't burn the coil. Smokers tried them, got frustrated, and went back to cigarettes. James and Adam saw the problem clearly. Existing vapes were designed by engineers for engineers. They weren't designed for people. If they wanted smokers to switch, they needed something different. Something simple. Something elegant. Something that felt as natural as lighting a cigarette. Something that could fit in your pocket and just work. This was their genius. They understood that smoking wasn't just about nicotine. It was about ritual. It was about the hand-to-mouth motion. It was about the pause, the breath, the moment of calm. If they could replicate that ritual without the smoke, without the tar, without the thousands of toxic chemicals, they wouldn't just be selling a product. They'd be selling freedom. The first prototype. They called their first device Plume. It ran on butane. Yes, butane, the same stuff you use in camping stoves. You had to carry a small gas canister around just to use it. The heating system made the device bulky and inconvenient. But it was a start. They showed it to investors. Venture capital firms, one after another, turned them down. About 50 firms said no. The reasons varied. Some said the market was too small. Some said the regulatory risk was too high. Some said they didn't want to be associated with nicotine. Many VCs have rules against investing in industries like tobacco, alcohol, or marijuana. Too risky. Too controversial. Too dirty. James and Adam were running out of options. Then they turned to individual, angel investors who use their own money and aren't bound by strict rules. One of them was Riaz Valani, the investor who believed. Riaz Valani didn't invest in many startups. He was careful, selective. He had seen too many young entrepreneurs with bright eyes and empty promises. But when James and Adam walked into his office, he paid attention. They were different. They weren't just pitching a product. They were pitching a mission. They had data. They had prototypes. They had thought through every detail of their design. They talked about combustion and carcinogens, about user experience and behavioral psychology. They talked about saving lives. And there was something else. Riaz's mother had died of cancer caused by smoking. He remembered her last years. The coughing, the weakness, the way she looked at him with eyes that said, "I wish I had never started." He looked at these two young men with their strange device and thought about his mother. If she had been able to use a product like this, could it have added years to her life? Could it have given her more time with her grandchildren? Could it have saved her from that terrible, slow death? That thought convinced him to invest. He told them, "If you avoid combustion, you're probably going to have a less toxic product. But we need evidence. We need to know what effect this is actually having." He also gave them a warning, one that would echo through the years. The usual Silicon Valley motto is move fast and break things. But when people's health is on the line, you have to be very careful. They nodded. They understood. They would be careful. They would be responsible. They would change the world. The marketing man. As Plume grew, they realized they needed help with marketing. They brought in a man named Kurt. Kurt had worked at Red Bull. He understood how to make a product feel cool without shouting about it. Instead of bombarding everyone with ads, Red Bull let people discover the brand in their own way. Through events, through word of mouth, through the feeling of being part of something exclusive. When Kurt first met James and Adam, he had a pack of cigarettes in his pocket. He didn't realize it until they both looked at it, that knowing glance, almost amused. Kurt guessed what they were thinking. Wow, he's a smoker. He'll probably understand this. For Kurt, cigarettes had always been like a monkey on his back. He had tried to quit dozens of times. He knew the struggle. He knew the shame. He knew the feeling of lighting up even when you hate yourself for it. That shared understanding created an unspoken connection. He told them something important. "I never want to be connected with big tobacco." Those companies knew they were selling a product that kills people. They lied about how harmful cigarettes really are. They lied to Congress. They lied to the public. They lied to their own mothers. James and Adam nodded. They felt the same way. They weren't big tobacco. They were the opposite. They were building something pure. The first real product. In 2010, they released Model 1. It was sleek, small, dark, handsome, as they described it. You opened the top, inserted a specially designed pod, put the mouthpiece back on, and pressed a button. After a few seconds, it heated up and was ready to use. The early ads used the slogan, small, dark, and handsome. They posted it in an online e-cigarette forum, and the reaction was immediate. People had never seen a device like it. Sleek, stylish, modern. It didn't look like a medical device. It didn't look like a science experiment. It looked like something you'd want to hold. Messages poured in. Pre-orders jumped. For the first time, it felt like their idea could actually change something. This might be the future of smoking. The feedback. They asked users what they thought. The comments kept coming back to one thing: flavors. At that time, they had mint, chocolate, blueberry, honey, cognac, and organic peach. People loved the variety. They kept asking for more. It wasn't just about getting nicotine. It was about the experience. Flavors helped smokers shift away from cigarettes while still enjoying something familiar and fun. A smoker who had spent years tasting nothing but ash could suddenly taste peach again. It was small, but it was something. But there was a problem. Smokers who tried Plume would often say, "It's fun, but it doesn't give me the same hit as a big pull from a cigarette." The device didn't deliver nicotine efficiently. The rush wasn't there. The satisfaction was incomplete. One person even taped two devices together, much to James's annoyance, because a single device wasn't strong enough for a heavy smoker. People might try it once and find it interesting, but they often went back to regular cigarettes. James and Adam knew they needed something more. The breakthrough. They went back to the drawing board. James focused on design. Adam focused on science. For James, design was everything. "Let's make something that looks like it was born in San Francisco," he said. The device needed to be simple. No buttons. No tanks. No confusion. It should feel like an Apple product. Intuitive, beautiful, inevitable. But simplicity alone wasn't enough. It also had to be satisfying, immediately. If a smoker didn't feel that familiar hit within the first few seconds, they would go back to their Marlboros. The product would fail. The mission would fail. While James refined the look, Adam was searching for a way to deliver nicotine that actually felt like smoking. Earlier e-cigarettes used something called freebase nicotine. It was the same form of nicotine used in nicotine gum and patches. But when heated and inhaled, it was harsh on the throat. Raising the nicotine strength made it almost impossible to inhale. Too bitter, too sharp, too painful. Smokers hated it. Adam started digging through old tobacco industry research and found something fascinating. In the 1960s, tobacco scientists had discovered something. If you combine nicotine with a weak organic acid, you get nicotine salts. This was the form of nicotine that occurred naturally in tobacco leaves. And it was much smoother, much easier to inhale. The tobacco companies had known about this for decades. But they never used it in cigarettes because they didn't need to. Cigarettes were already addictive enough. The combustion of tobacco created its own chemical cocktail that delivered nicotine straight to the brain. But for a vapor device, nicotine salts were perfect. They allowed for much higher nicotine levels without that painful bite. They delivered a rush that felt almost identical to a cigarette. It was, in a way, a chemical workaround. One that allowed nicotine to slide past the body's usual warning system. In the summer of 2013, Adam brought in a chemist named Chunwei Zhang to perfect the formula. They tested different versions, adjusting the nicotine and acid levels bit by bit. Too much acid, and the flavor was off. Too little, and the hit was weak. They worked in a small lab, surrounded by bottles and beakers, tasting and testing and adjusting. And instead of long, formal testing processes, Adam and Chunwei would simply hand prototypes to their coworkers and ask, "Try this. How does it feel?" The feedback was immediate, honest. brutal. And slowly, the formula got better. That was the beginning of what would become Juul's signature nicotine experience. The one that felt almost exactly like smoking a cigarette. The one that would change everything. First impressions. When people tried the new formula, the reactions were intense. One person said, "The buzz hit so perfectly. It felt almost like the first time I had ever smoked, like being a beginner again." Another said, "The moment I inhaled, I thought, this feels exactly like a cigarette." But after a few more puffs, the realization came. It wasn't just similar. It was better. Some loved the smooth throat hit. Some were amazed at how fast the nicotine reached their brain. For others, it was the ritual, the hand-to-mouth movement, but without the smoke, the smell, or the guilt. To many smokers, Juul didn't feel like a replacement. It felt like an upgrade. James and Adam were ecstatic. They had done it. They had created something that could actually compete with cigarettes. Something that could save lives. They didn't know it yet, but they had also created something else. Something that would hook a generation. The launch. They called it Juul. The name was simple, clean, memorable. It sounded like Juul, something precious, something you'd want to keep. The device was a small rectangle, about the size of a USB stick. It came in colors like gray, silver, and gold. It had no buttons, no switches, no complicated instructions. You just put a pod in and inhaled. It was the most elegant nicotine delivery device ever created. The pods came in 4 flavors: fruit, creme brulee, mint, and tobacco. The spellings were unusual: fruit, brule, might. Almost playful, almost childish. Some people thought it was silly. Others thought it was genius. Either way, it got attention. James and Adam believed that flavors were critical. Just as Tesla offers multiple colors so buyers can choose what fits them, Juul offered different tastes so smokers could find what worked for them. The tobacco flavor was for the die-hard Marlboro Red smokers, the ones who would never switch to anything that didn't taste like real cigarettes. The other flavors were meant to make the experience enjoyable, not just a nicotine fix. Because if quitting smoking felt like punishment, no one would do it. If it felt like pleasure, maybe, just maybe, smokers would make the switch. They were proud of what they had built, and they had every reason to be. Within months, Juul was everywhere. The party. In 2015, Juul threw a launch party in San Francisco. One young attendee, just 17 at the time, remembered being invited by a friend. They had no idea what to expect. When they arrived, guests were greeted by a Polaroid camera. The room was lit with pink and blue lights that created a lively, immersive vibe. DJs were playing. Projections of the Juul logo appeared on the walls, complete with hashtags to guide social media posts. Attendees were encouraged to share their experiences online: Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. The room was full of young people, dancing, laughing, posting. The user remembered dancing, having fun, and noticing lots of coughing in the room. A reminder of the nicotine in the air. The party was a huge success. It made Juul feel trendy, social, and exciting. It turned a nicotine product into a cultural experience. James and Adam watched from the side, smiling. They had done it. They had created something people loved. They had no idea that this party, this celebration of their success, would become part of the evidence used against them. No idea that those pink and blue lights, those hashtags, those young faces, would be Exhibit A in the case that would destroy their reputation. All they saw was success. All they felt was pride. The mission statement. In interviews, James and Adam talked about their mission. They weren't selling cigarettes. They weren't selling addiction. They were selling freedom. Freedom from tar, freedom from smoke, freedom from the thousands of chemicals that kill smokers every day. They quoted statistics. There are 8 million deaths per year worldwide, with 480,000 in the United States alone, accounting for 1 in every 5 deaths in the U.S. They talked about the smokers who had written to them, grateful, tearful, relieved. Smokers who had tried everything: patches, gum, hypnotism, Therapy, cold turkey. Smokers who had given up hope. Smokers who had accepted that they would die with a cigarette in their hand. And then they tried Juul. And for the first time in years, they didn't want a cigarette. James said in one interview, "If we can get just 10% of smokers to switch, we'll save hundreds of thousands of lives. If we can get 50%, we'll save millions." This isn't just a business. This is a public health revolution. He believed it. Adam believed it. Everyone in the company believed it. They were the good guys. They were saving the world. The question they didn't ask. But there was a question they never asked themselves. A question that would haunt them later. A question that every innovator, every dreamer, every person who wants to change the world must ask. What if this works too well? What if the product they designed for adult smokers was so good, so satisfying, so perfectly engineered, that it didn't just attract smokers? What if it attracted everyone? What if teenagers, who had never smoked a cigarette in their lives, picked up a Juul and discovered that nicotine rush for the first time? What if they loved it? What if they got hooked before they even understood what was happening? What if the device that was supposed to end the smoking epidemic became the cause of a new one? James and Adam didn't ask that question. Or maybe they did, and they pushed it aside. Maybe they told themselves, "We'll be careful. We'll regulate. We'll make sure our marketing doesn't target kids." Maybe they believed their own good intentions would protect them. But good intentions are not enough. And a generation of teenagers would pay the price. The moment before the fall. By the end of 2017, Juul was everywhere. In college dorms, in high school bathrooms, in offices, in bars. The little USB-shaped device had become a cultural phenomenon. It was sleek, it was cool, it was now. James and Adam were featured in magazines. They were invited to conferences. They were hailed as visionaries, as disruptors, as the men who would finally kill the cigarette. They had millions of users. They had billions in valuation. They had changed the world. They stood on top of the mountain and looked down at everything they had built. They didn't see the cliff edge. They didn't see the fall coming. But it was coming. And it would be spectacular. Their blind faith. They believed they were saving lives. They believed they were the good guys. They believed that their invention would be remembered alongside penicillin, alongside the polio vaccine, alongside every great breakthrough in human health. They believed that one day, people would look back and say, "Those two men, standing behind a building at Stanford, smoking cigarettes and dreaming, they changed everything." And in that belief, they were both right and wrong. Right, because they did change everything. Wrong, because not all change is salvation. Sometimes, change is just a different kind of prison. End of chapter 4.